There is something you have never said out loud. Not about a trade, not about a loss, about the number, the balance. The $150 sitting in an account you keep minimized on your screen because the thought of someone seeing it, really seeing it, produces a feeling you do not have a clean name for. Not quite shame, something adjacent to it. The awareness that you are supposed to be further along than this, that the traders you watch online seem to have started from somewhere more legitimate, and that $150 is not a starting point. It is a situation to escape, as fast as possible by whatever means necessary. That is the confession. Not that you have the account, that you have the relationship with it that you have. The relationship that says, this is temporary. This is what I have to work through before the real trading begins. The relationship that assigns urgency to every session, because every session that does not significantly grow the balance is another session where you are still here, still at this number, still the person with $150 who has not yet arrived. You do not tell people what your account size is. Not really. You mention trading in general terms. You talk about setups and strategies and timeframes, but you do not say the number, because the number carries a weight that the trading does not, and the weight is not about the market. It is about what you have decided the number means about you. I have watched this dynamic play out in more traders than I can count, and what I want to give you in this conversation is not reassurance. What I want to give you is what Mark Douglas would have given you if you sat down across from him with $150 on the screen and a question you did not quite know how to ask. He would not have told you that everything is going to work out. He was not that kind of teacher. He would have looked at the number, and then he would have said something precise, something that was not a consolation, something that I have come to understand after a long time working with traders at every stage and every account size, is the single most important thing a trader at your level can hear. $150 is not a liability. It is a specific environment, and it is exactly, not approximately, not close to, exactly the environment in which the mental foundation of a professional trader is either built correctly or broken permanently. The traders who skip this stage, who obtain larger capital before the work is done, do not avoid the lessons. They pay for them at a price they cannot absorb. You still have the option to pay for them at a price that lets you continue. That is not a small thing. That is everything. Let me show you what Mark Douglas saw when he looked at a small account that most people were too embarrassed to take seriously. To understand the argument he would make, you first need to understand what he spent his career studying, which was not the market, though he understood the market well. It was the gap, the specific, consistent, repeatable gap between what traders knew they should do and what they actually did when real money was moving in real time. He watched traders with excellent strategies destroy themselves. He watched traders with mediocre strategies build careers. He observed the same mistakes appearing across different instruments, different strategies, different backgrounds, different levels of experience. And what he found was that the mistakes were not random. They were not failures of intelligence or knowledge. They were expressions of a psychology that had not been calibrated to function calmly under the pressure of real financial risk. He called the process of building that calm functioning the development of the mental framework. And the critical insight, the one that makes the title of this conversation accurate and not consoling, is this: the mental framework is not built by studying, it is built by doing. It is built in live conditions with real money at stake, under the specific pressures that real money creates. And the conditions that make that building process possible, that allow the mistakes to happen and be absorbed and learned from without catastrophic consequence, those conditions exist most perfectly, most completely, and most irreplaceably at small account sizes. I would call this the training ground principle. The idea that a small account is not a stepping stone to be skipped as quickly as possible. It is the only environment where certain things can be learned at a cost that allows the learning to continue. Every real lesson the market teaches costs something. The question is whether you pay that cost at a size you can absorb or at a size that ends the story. Larry Williams spent time early in his trading career making mistakes at small scale, mistakes that would have ended a larger account, mistakes that, at the scale he was working at, were lessons. The discipline he built in that period, the specific, real, practiced discipline of holding a stop and taking a valid entry and managing a winner correctly, was not separate from the capital growth that followed. It was the condition that made the capital growth possible. You cannot import that discipline from somewhere else. You cannot acquire it through preparation alone. It is built in the doing, at the level where the doing is survivable. Let me be precise about what I mean by calibration, because the word is important and I do not want it to remain abstract. Calibration is not the intellectual understanding of what correct behavior looks like. Almost every trader I have ever spoken with has the intellectual understanding. They can describe the correct behavior in every scenario. They know the stop should not be moved. They know the winner should be allowed to run. They know revenge trading destroys accounts. The knowledge is not the variable. Calibration is the condition of the nervous system under live pressure. It is the state in which the threat response, the ancient automatic mechanism that fires when something valuable is at risk, does not overwhelm the rational decision-making system that was trained in the calm of preparation. A calibrated trader feels the threat response. The position moves against them and the discomfort is real, but the discomfort is proportionate to the actual risk rather than catastrophically amplified, and it does not override the plan. An uncalibrated trader experiences the same trade and the same market movement and arrives at a completely different physiological state, one in which the discomfort is so large and so urgent that the rational mind effectively hands the controls over to the survival instinct, and the survival instinct makes the decisions. The calibration happens by degrees. It is not a switch that flips. It is built through repeated live exposure at risk levels the nervous system can hold without triggering the override. And at $150, with correctly sized positions, that exposure is available to you every session. Not cheaply, the lessons still cost something real, but at a cost that does not end the training. $150 is the level where the doing is survivable for you right now. That is the argument. That is what Mark Douglas would say, and I'm going to show you exactly what it means in practice. I want to walk you through what it actually looks like when the training ground principle is violated, not in theory, in the specific sequence of decisions that happens when a trader holds $150 under the particular weight of the urgency to escape it. Because the confession is not just a feeling, it produces behavior, predictable, consistent, costly behavior that follows directly from the meaning you have assigned to the account size, and the behavior begins before any trade is opened.
The first mechanism starts with a calculation that sounds like strategy, but is driven by urgency. At $150, you tell yourself that small positions are not worth taking, that the dollar gain from a correctly sized trade at this account level is so trivial it barely justifies the session, so you size up. You construct a logic for it, that you need to grow the account and small gains do not grow accounts, and therefore larger positions are necessary. The logic is internally consistent, and it is the single most destructive decision you are making on a regular basis. The moment the position is too large for what your psychology can hold without triggering a threat response, the trade changes in character entirely. It stops being a probability you are managing according to a plan. It becomes a situation you are surviving. Your breathing becomes shallower. Your attention narrows to the red numbers. Every candle against you is not market noise. It is a signal, a warning, the sound of something being taken. And the decisions made from that state are not the decisions of the plan you built when the market was closed. They are the decisions of a nervous system trying to protect you from what it is registered as genuine danger. That danger is measured not in the analysis of the trade, but in the dollar size of the pending loss relative to the total balance you feel you cannot afford to lose. A $15 drawdown on a $150 account from an oversized position does not feel like $15. It feels like 10% of everything. It feels like the account moving backward when it already feels too small to move forward, and the stop loss that was correctly placed before the trade opened becomes, in that state, the enemy. It becomes the line that needs to be moved, adjusted, extended, because allowing it to be hit means accepting a loss that the nervous system has already classified as unbearable. And so the stop moves, the loss grows, the account shrinks further than the plan ever intended. The second mechanism is what urgency does to patience. You are watching for a setup, a real one, the specific confluence of conditions your method requires before entry is justified. The setup forms to 90% completion. Everything is almost there, and something says, close enough. The account needs to grow. You have been waiting. Take it. And you do. The entry is slightly wrong. The stop placement is slightly compromised because the structure that would anchor it perfectly is slightly absent. The trade opens with a defect that no amount of management can fully correct. This is not a strategy error. It is a patience error produced by urgency, by the inability to sit with an incomplete setup because the account balance is making demands that the market did not make. The third mechanism is what happens when the trade actually works. You are in profit, partway to your target, maybe 30%, maybe 40%. The gain is real and visible on the screen, and a voice arrives, quiet at first, then insistent, that says, take it. What if this turns? You worked for this. Take it before it disappears. And you close before the target, before the plan, before any structure in the market has told you to exit. You take $18 where your plan said to take $42. The trade runs to your target without you. The win produces frustration instead of confidence, and your reward-to-risk ratio across 100 such trades will never, regardless of your win rate, produce the growth that your analysis is capable of generating. Before I go further, if you are watching this and you have never subscribed, do it now. This channel exists for one reason: to give traders with small accounts the mental edge that nobody else is talking about. Hit subscribe, then tell me in the comments, have you made this exact mistake? What happened? Drop the account size you were working with at the time. I read every comment. The fourth mechanism closes the loop, and it is the one that undoes everything the other sessions built. A real loss happens, a loss that changes the balance in a way you can see and feel. $150 becomes $118. The urgency that was present before the loss becomes something sharper after it. Not just urgency, a heat, a need that is almost physical to reverse what just happened. The account was already too small, now it is smaller still, and the only available mechanism to undo that is another trade. You are at the screen before the session should have continued. You find a reason to enter, not a setup, a justification. You size larger than the plan allows because the plan-sized position cannot recover what was lost at any useful speed. The trade is placed from urgency rather than analysis. And something else happens that I want to name precisely. The normal quality of observation that governs a properly entered trade is not present. You are not watching the market, you are watching the profit and loss figure. Every tick in your favor produces a brief relief. Every tick against you produces a spike of the same urgency that opened the trade. The decision-making in this state is not trading. It is the emotional management of a feeling that happened before the trade was placed. Sometimes it wins, and that is its own kind of damage, because the nervous system records the behavior that produced the win and files it as valid. More often, it does not, and the account ends the day meaningfully smaller than it began, not because the strategy was wrong, but because the strategy was never governing the decisions. The emotion of the first loss was governing every decision that followed, and it governed them towards a result that made the original loss look small. This is the blow-up cycle. Not usually a single dramatic event, a sequence of mechanically connected decisions, each one produced by the state that the decision before it created. And the mechanism that starts the sequence, the urgency, the shame, the need to escape the number on the screen, is not a character flaw. It is the predictable output of a psychology that was never taught what to do with a small account except treat it as a problem to be solved. Now I want to tell you what the corrected version of this looks like from the inside. Not a new set of rules, a different relationship with what you already have.
I want to be clear about what I'm not saying before I tell you what I am saying. I'm not saying that $150 is enough capital to trade full-time. I'm not saying that correct execution alone will turn it into a large account by next month. I am not making a promise about the dollar trajectory of a small account managed well. What I'm saying is about the psychology, not the math. And the psychology is the variable that determines whether the math ever gets a chance to work at all.
The correction begins with a single act that sounds simple and requires more of most traders than anything else in this work. You decide to take the account exactly as seriously as it is, not more than it is, not as a career instrument that must perform on a timeline, and not less, not as something too trivial to manage with full precision and full care, exactly as it is. $150 of real capital in a real market under real risk, capable of real growth when handled with real discipline, capable of teaching real things that nothing else can teach. That decision changes the question governing every session. Instead of asking how to grow the account as fast as possible, you ask how to execute correctly. The shift sounds small. The downstream consequences are complete. When the question is how to execute correctly, position size is calibrated to a different standard. Not what the strategy says in the abstract, not what the urgency of the balance demands, but the amount at which the trade can be held without the nervous system overriding the plan. At $150, that amount might be $3 of risk. It might be $5. The precise number matters less than the diagnostic experience of placing the trade and watching it move. If the trade pulls back from entry by half the distance to your stop and you feel mild, interested attention, the position is sized correctly. If it produces tension, a grip, the need to act, the position is already too large, and the mechanism that produces all 4 errors I described is already activated. Let me walk you through what a correctly sized trade actually feels like at this account level, because I want the experience to be concrete rather than theoretical. You see a setup form. The criteria are met, all of them, not most of them. You place the trade with $3 at risk. The position opens. It moves slightly against you within the first few minutes, which is the normal noise of any live position. At $3 risk, you feel something. Not nothing, the money is real and the outcome is uncertain, but you feel something manageable. You assess the structure. The structure that justified the trade is still intact. The move against you is inside the noise, not a signal that the analysis was wrong. You hold. The trade reverses. It moves in your direction. You watch it approach the target. The voice arrives, quiet, not urgent, that suggests taking the gain early. You observe the voice. You note that the structure has not told you to exit. You remain in the trade. The target is reached. You close. That sequence, entry, hold through the pullback, hold through the temptation to exit early, close at the plan, is not a large gain in dollar terms at this account size. But what happened during that sequence is not measurable in dollar terms. The stop held, the winner was not cut, the plan governed from beginning to end. Nothing inside you was stronger than the plan, and that specific experience of the plan being the final authority is what was built in that trade, not the dollars, the habit. At $3 risk, inside a $150 account, treating every session with the seriousness that the training ground deserves. If you are still watching, you already understand that trading is not what most people think it is. Subscribe right now if you have not already, and turn on the bell so you never miss a video. This is the content that changes how you trade, not just what you trade. Leave a like too. It takes 1 second, and it helps this reach more traders who need it. Now tell me, what time is it where you are watching from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments. Our viewers come from every corner of the world, and every time I see a new location in the comments, I am reminded why this channel matters. Let me show you what the compounding of that habit produces over time, and I want to be precise here, not as a promise, but as an honest description of the mechanism. Richard Dennis started in the markets with a small amount of capital. before the turtle trading experiment, before he proved that the discipline of trading could be taught to ordinary people with no prior experience, he spent years learning at a scale where each lesson was survivable. He was not hiding from larger capital. He was using smaller capital to build something that larger capital would later require. The specific ability to follow a systematic approach without deviation when real money was moving against him. The developed capacity to absorb a losing period without abandoning the method that would produce results across a larger sample. Those capacities were not inherited. They were built, trade by trade, at account sizes that most people considered beneath serious consideration. The compounding that followed was not just financial, it was psychological. Each correctly executed trade added to a body of evidence, personal, real, irrefutable evidence that the process worked when it was followed. That the stop held at the right place produces better outcomes over time than the stop moved under pressure. That the valid entry taken with full criteria outperforms the compromised entry taken from urgency. That the winner held to the target compounds differently than the winner closed early out of fear. This evidence does not accumulate in a simulator. It does not accumulate in hindsight analysis of charts after the session is over. It accumulates in the live experience of having done the thing correctly when doing it incorrectly was the easier path. When the trade was moving against you and you held the stop. When the profit was tempting you and you held the plan. When the loss produced the heat and you did not open another position. Each of those moments, chosen correctly, deposits something into the framework that no amount of theory can replicate, because the framework is made of experience, and the experience is happening right now, in the sessions you are tempted to dismiss as too small to matter. And here's the truth about the ego that I want to name directly, because it is one of the most consistently damaging patterns in small account trading. The trader who decides that $150 is too small to take seriously, who sizes recklessly because restraint feels absurd at this scale, who skips the work because the returns are not large enough to justify the effort, is not protecting themselves from the limitations of a small account. They're ensuring that those limitations become permanent. Because the habits formed in the sessions they dismissed as too small to matter are the habits that will govern the behavior at $1,500 and at $15,000. Not the habits they intend to have when the balance grows, the habits they actually practiced right now in the sessions that felt beneath their capability. The sessions that feel too small to matter are precisely the sessions that matter most. Every trade at this level where the stop is held, every winner that reaches its target, every revenge impulse that is recognized and not acted on, each one is adding a layer to the foundation, a foundation that the balance in the account will eventually reflect if the foundation is built correctly here. I have to stop here and ask you directly, have you ever been in a position where you knew exactly what you were supposed to do, and you did the opposite anyway? Not because you didn't know better, because something took over. Write what happened in the comments. I want to hear your story. Every single comment gets read. Now I want to give you the full argument, the one that makes the word exactly in the title not a comfort but a precise claim.
Mark Douglas understood that most traders spend their careers working on the wrong problem. They study the market, and the market is worth studying. The technical structure is real. The probabilities within that structure are real. But they apply their understanding of the market to an instrument, their own cytology, that has never been calibrated to function under pressure. An uncalibrated instrument applied to a correct theory does not produce correct results. It produces correct theory contaminated by incorrect execution. And the contamination happens in the same place every time, in the live moments where the emotion of the trade overrides the logic of the plan. What makes this insight so important for the trader sitting with $150 is this. The calibration problem is not a problem of scale. A trader with a $50,000 account and an uncalibrated psychology does not have a smaller version of the same problem. They have the same problem at a larger cost per lesson.
The $150 trader who uses the training ground correctly, who builds the calibration through deliberate, correct execution at survivable risk, arrives at each new capital level with a framework that was built at the previous one. They do not need to relearn the same lessons at greater expense. The framework travels with them. It scales because it was built at the level where the cost of building it was something they could absorb. The calibration process happens in one environment, under real risk, with real money, with real consequences. The calibration happens fastest and most efficiently when the consequences of each wrong response are large enough to teach but small enough to survive. When you can make the mistake and continue. When the lesson costs something real but not everything. That is the exact description of a $150 account managed with correct position sizing and genuine seriousness. Not a sandbox, not a rehearsal, a live training environment where the cost of each lesson is calibrated to what your current stage of development can absorb, and where the correct responses, practiced enough times under real conditions, become the reflexes that govern everything that follows. When Mark Douglas said, and he said variations of this throughout his career, that the mental framework is the variable, what he was pointing toward was this: two traders with identical strategies, identical market access, identical information will produce completely different results over time if their mental frameworks are calibrated differently. The calibrated framework does not eliminate losses. It does not guarantee wins. It produces the consistent, rule-governed execution that allows an edge to express itself across hundreds of trades. The uncalibrated framework interrupts the edge repeatedly in the moments when the edge is being tested, until the account no longer reflects the strategy at all, but only the emotional state of the person executing it. You can build the calibrated framework, not quickly, not without discomfort, but methodically, trade by trade, session by session, at the account size you have right now in the exact conditions that make the building possible. That is not a consolation for where you are. That is the most honest description of what where you are is actually for. The confession at the center of this video is not that you have $150. It is that you have been treating it as something to be ashamed of and escaped. And what I want to leave you with is a different understanding of what it actually is. Not an embarrassment, not an obstacle, the specific, irreplaceable, most important training environment you will ever have. The place where the habits that will govern every larger amount are being formed right now, in every session, with every decision you make. The market does not reward who is right, it rewards who is still in the game. Still in the game is the result of making decisions at every critical moment and every temptation to deviate that do not put you in a position where one trade, one bad session, one emotional spiral removes you from the process entirely. That skill, staying in the game, is built exactly here, at this size, with this number. Not in spite of the number, because of it. Before you close this video, I want to leave you with one question to sit with honestly. Ask yourself, are you trading to build something or are you trading to feel something? The answer to that question is not in the balance, it is in the decisions you make during each session, and the answer can change, starting with the next trade you take. Tell me where you are watching from, your city, your country. Drop it in the comments right now. We have viewers trading from every part of the world, from Lagos to London, from Mumbai to Manila, from Sao Paulo to Seoul, and every location in the comments reminds me that this is a global community of people working toward the same thing. And tell me this, what account size are you working with right now? $100, $150, $300, $500, more? Wherever you are, the number does not disqualify you from this conversation. Write it below. Before you go, remember this. The market does not reward who is right. It rewards who is still in the game. If this video gave you something, subscribe and turn on the notification bell. The next video continues this conversation. Share this with one trader you know who is fighting the same battle. And right here on your screen are 2 more videos that go deeper into what we started today. I will see you there.